Black CEO, mocked at billionaire's mansion by dawn. Their $2B empire was gone. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Don't touch that. You're just a servant. The words sliced through the ballroom like shattered crystal. Gasps, then laughter brittle. Expensive laughter echoed beneath the chandeliers. Amara Lewis froze, the champagne flute still poised delicately in her hand. Across from her, Isabel Moreau, golden gown, golden hair, and the kind of arrogance only old money could afford, stood trembling with self-righteous fury. "Didn't anyone teach you boundaries?" Isabel sneered, voice sharp enough to cut silk. "You people always think you belong everywhere once you're let inside." The crowd didn't know whether to laugh or look away. Some did both. Others simply raised their phones, screens glowing like judgment, hungry for humiliation. A man near the bar muttered, "Who invited her?" "She's staff," another replied, certain of a lie that made him feel safer. The orchestra faltered, strings stuttering mid-waltz. One wrong note hung in the air, trembling, before dissolving into silence. Amara didn't speak. She simply placed her glass on the marble table beside her. Every movement, precise, controlled, quiet. The soft click of crystal against stone sounded louder than the laughter had moments ago. Isabel mistook that calm for submission. She stepped closer, perfume heavy, voice dripping disdain. "Smile for the cameras, dear," she whispered. "At least you'll be remembered for something." Her friends chuckled. The sound was cruel, sharp, rehearsed. Then the sound of liquid meeting stone. A splash of red wine streaked across Amara's orange gown, vivid as a wound blooming in real time. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed nervously. "Oh no," Isabel said, feigning innocence. "I really hope that wasn't too expensive." Every eye turned toward Amara. She exhaled slowly. No tears, no flinch, only the smallest lift of her chin. Something in the room shifted a drop in temperature, a tightening of breath. The chandeliers seemed to dim, as though the air itself recoiled. Amara looked around the ballroom, the marble pillars, the painted ceilings, the glittering sea of people pretending not to witness cruelty. Her gaze landed back on Isabel. "It's fine," she said softly. "Accidents happen," but her tone carried something else, a promise. Behind her, a waiter froze mid-step, sensing the voltage in the silence. Even the air conditioning hummed lower, like the building itself was listening. Isabel smirked, mistaking composure for weakness. "Good," she said, satisfied. "Then be a darling and clean it up before someone important slips." The words hit like venom, but Amara didn't move. Instead, she picked up a folded napkin, dabbing at the stain with surgical precision. The simple motion, graceful, unbothered, turned the humiliation into theater. Every camera caught it. A woman in orange silk, calm under assault, while privilege shouted itself hoarse. She looked up once more, her eyes locking onto Isabel's. "You're right," Amara murmured. "Someone will slip tonight." The orchestra hadn't resumed. The laughter had died. All that remained was the slow, deliberate sound of Amara setting her glass back onto the table, steady, measured, final. The music hadn't returned. The silence was alive now, breathing, heavy, electric. Conversations froze in midair, like the chandeliers themselves were holding their light hostage. Isabel adjusted her gown, trying to reclaim control with movement alone. "Don't just stand there," she said to the nearest waiter, her voice cracking under a thin coat of confidence. "Clean this up." The young man hesitated. His hands shook. Amara's calm had unsettled the entire room. "Now!" Isabel snapped. The word ricocheted against marble and gold, too sharp for a place built for elegance. But Amara didn't move. She simply lifted her eyes, slow, deliberate, assessing the room one face at a time. The crowd that had been entertained seconds ago now found their throats dry. Men in tuxedos shifted their weight. Women clutched their glasses too tightly. Someone dropped a fork. The sound rang out like a gunshot. For a long moment, No one breathed. Isabel forced a laugh, brittle as glass. "Oh, don't look at me like that," she said to the guests. "These galas attract all sorts of people." No one joined her laughter. Amara turned, her voice measured. "It's true. They do." She let the sentence hang. Neither defense nor threat, just gravity. At the far end of the ballroom, an older man with silver hair leaned toward his wife. "Is that Lewis?" he whispered. She frowned, uncertain. The name stirred something. A headline, perhaps. A merger. Amara bent slightly, picking up her clutch from the chair beside her. No rush. Every motion had weight, intention. She tapped her phone once, then slid it back inside. Isabel mistook the gesture for surrender. "Good," she said with a triumphant smile. "You're learning your place." Amara's gaze didn't rise. "So are you?" she murmured. The orchestra's conductor shifted uneasily, his bow suspended midair. The tension had turned physical thick enough to taste. From somewhere in the back, a camera flash burst white against the gold walls. It startled the guests, but Amara didn't blink. That photo, Isabel's finger raised, Amara's face unbroken, would travel farther than anyone there could imagine. Outside the ballroom windows, snow began to fall slow, silent, inevitable. A man near the bar cleared his throat. "Maybe we should move on," he suggested weakly. "Start the auction?" "It's Seti's ropes." With the Sequit problem, Isabel ignored him. She was still staring at Amara, unable to comprehend how someone could remain so composed under such public degradation. That composure frightened her more than anger ever could. Amara finally lifted her glass again. It was half full, no shaking hand, no visible emotion. She studied the reflection of the chandelier in the wine's surface, then said softly, "I suppose we should toast." Isabel blinked. "To what?" "To understanding," Amara said. "It's overdue." There was something in her tone, a quiet certainty, that didn't need volume to command attention. Even the air conditioning seemed to hush to hear her. The chandelier light trembled faintly, scattering across her orange silk like embers. Isabel's smile faltered. "You're making a scene." Amara tilted her head, calm as a closing door. "No," she said. "You did that for me." And eyes 5 laws. Before anyone could respond, a faint buzz came from somewhere subtle, mechanical, precise, a notification. Then another. Phones began to vibrate across the room like a spreading pulse. Isabel's assistant frowned at her screen. Her eyes widened. "Ma'am," she whispered, stepping close. "Something's happening with the accounts." Isabel turned sharply. "What accounts?" But Amara was already walking away slowly, elegantly, each step echoing through the hall like punctuation. Behind her, the silence broke open again. This time not with laughter, but with the sound of panic being born. And somewhere, in the middle of that unraveling music and fear, Isabel realized the one thing privilege had never taught her: how to recognize the moment power leaves the room. By the time Amara reached the marble staircase, the ballroom behind her had fractured into whispers. The orchestra's instruments lay still on their laps, the way soldiers freeze when the war suddenly shifts sides. Every face that had once stared down at her now watched her retreat, not in pity, but in awe they couldn't name. She didn't rush. Power never does. Outside, the night pressed cold fingers against the glass doors. Chicago in December was merciless, but it felt warmer than the air she'd just left behind. A valet rushed forward, fumbling her coat, unsure whether to address her as "ma'am" or "miss." She spared him the decision with a single glance and stepped into the waiting car. The door shut with a soft click, the sound of distance being drawn. Inside, the world became silence and soft leather. Amara unlocked her phone. The screen's light painted her face in pale gold as messages cascaded in from her executive team. Elena, Chief Counsel. Clause executed. Transfer complete. All negotiations frozen pending your statement. Raj Finance. Markets already reacting. M Holdings projected to open 17% down tomorrow. Elena again. Do you want a press release tonight? Amara stared at the messages for a long second, then typed just 2 words. Not yet. She placed the phone beside her and looked out the window. Snow fell thick now, each flake catching light like slow-motion ash. Her reflection in the glass was calm, but the eyes staring back carried a history the world pretended not to see. 25 years earlier, she had waited outside a similar ballroom. Not in a gown, but in a uniform pressed white shirt, borrowed shoes. She'd been catering part-time, paying for her degree in finance by refilling champagne glasses for people who would never remember her face. That night, a guest had told her she poured like a queen. She'd smiled, but inside, she'd sworn she would never again serve a room that couldn't see her worth. It took a lifetime to turn that vow into architecture. Now she was the unseen engine of half the skyline, Vanguard Equity. Her creation, a web of clean energy, biotech, and strategic acquisitions, valued at $48 billion. She had built it quietly, through shells and subsidiaries, keeping her image out of the press. People respected the name Lewis, but they never connected it to a face. She preferred it that way. That invisibility was armor, and tonight, it had been weaponized. The irony wasn't lost on her. Isabel Moreau had mocked a woman she'd spent months begging for partnership. Every Moreau Holdings proposal, every carefully worded email, every legal clause, they'd all landed on Amara's desk for final approval. The woman Isabel humiliated wasn't an outsider. She was the signature waiting to save their collapsing empire. The driver's voice pulled her from thought. "Home, Miss Lewis?" She looked up from the snow-streaked window. "Not yet," she said again, the same two words she'd sent to her team. "Where to, ma'am?" "Downtown, the Apex Tower." The driver hesitated. Everyone knew that building, the gleaming steel monolith that housed Vanguard's headquarters. He nodded, eyes wide, and turned onto the slick avenue. As the car glided through the city, Amara's gaze softened. Her reflection overlapped with billboards glowing over Michigan Avenue. Faces of the powerful, none of them hers. She thought of her grandmother, hands raw from scrubbing office floors, whispering, "One day, baby, they'll pay you for the dignity they stole from me." Tonight, those words finally felt complete. When she entered the tower, the lobby guard stood straighter. "Good evening, Miss Lewis." "Evening, James." "Rough night?" he asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "No, just a revealing one." The elevator doors slid shut behind her, sealing the outside world away. Above, the city pulsed lights blinking like nervous eyes. While one floor at a time, the woman they'd mocked ascended back into the system she built, invisible no longer. By morning, Chicago would wake to headlines, frozen assets, and the slow realization that the most powerful person in their empire had been standing in their ballroom all along, and she hadn't even raised her voice. The elevator opened into silence, the kind that belongs only to places built for power. Floor-to-ceiling glass, the city glittering beneath like circuitry, and a single light glowing from the boardroom at the end of the hall. Amara stepped out, her heels barely whispering on the marble. Elena and Raj were already there, both standing as if awaiting judgment. On the screen behind them glowed a dozen news tickers and market graphs, all red. "Reports are multiplying," Raj said. "Rumors of insider withdrawal. M Holdings stock has dropped 15% in after-hours trading." Elena added, "They're calling for an emergency statement. If we stay silent, speculation will feed the fire." Amara walked to the window. Her reflection merged with the skyline, glass against glass. "Let it burn," she said quietly. Neither of them spoke. She turned, her voice calm but deliberate. "Do we have the termination file ready?" Elena nodded. "Every clause executed, every compliance note signed. They can't sue without exposing their debts." "Good," Amara said. "We don't destroy, we reveal." She poured herself a glass of water from the decanter and took a measured sip. "What about public response?" Raj hesitated. "Social sentiment is shifting. Someone filmed the scene. It's trending." He pulled up a clip on the monitor. The video showed Isabel's hand raised, the accusation sharp. "You're just a servant," and Amara standing motionless in orange silk, the embodiment of restraint. The caption beneath read, "Number the look she gave her." Elena exhaled. "It's gone viral." Amara's gaze stayed on the screen. "Then the truth doesn't need me to speak." The clip replayed, looping through the moment of humiliation, but now under the light of revelation, it looked different. Not weakness, not embarrassment. Authority disguised as grace. Half a city away, the Moreau mansion was unraveling. Isabel's voice echoed through the grand hall as she shouted into her phone. "You don't understand. It was a misunderstanding." She wouldn't. But the voice on the other end was clinical. "Vanguard's withdrawal is official. You'll need to address your board." Her father appeared in the doorway, pale and tight-lipped. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Nothing," Isabel cried. She embarrassed me in front of everyone. Harrison Moreau's expression hardened. You embarrassed yourself, and now the company is finished. He sank into an armchair, his voice low. We were depending on that deal to cover the debt. Without it, the banks will move by morning. The chandelier above them flickered, and for the first time in her life, Isabel realized what it felt like to be small. Back in the tower, Elena's phone buzzed again. Press outlets requesting interviews. CNBC wants confirmation. The public's turning this into a morality play. It is right to down with the gala backed out. Amara closed the file on her desk. Then let them watch the curtain rise. Raj looked uneasy. Should we prepare a statement defending your actions at the gala? She shook her head. No defense. Dignity doesn't need one. Her assistant entered quietly, setting down a single folder marked Confidential Redistribution Initiative. Amara glanced at it, then to Elena. We move forward. Phase 2 starts tonight. Elena hesitated. The fund? Amara nodded. Transfer the rescinded assets from Moreau Holdings into the new foundation. Name it after her, my grandmother. Raj blinked. That's over $1 billion. It's justice, Amara said. Measured in opportunities, not applause. Outside, lightning traced the edges of the skyline. The city was restless, half of it scrolling through scandal, half of it searching for someone to believe in. Amara stepped closer to the window, her voice almost a whisper. By dawn, they'll understand what respect costs when it's overdue. She turned away, her reflection fading into darkness, the glow of her phone lighting her face one last time. Message sent. Press release at sunrise. Title: Vanguard Equity withdraws $2B merger effective immediately. The cursor blinked once, waiting. Then she added one final line. Sometimes silence is the loudest verdict. She pressed send, and somewhere across the sleeping city, a billion-dollar empire began to melt into history, one snowflake at a time. The city hadn't slept. By 3:17 a.m., the hum of panic had replaced the music of the gala. Screens glowed blue in penthouses and trading floors alike, messages, alerts, and unanswered calls rippling through the night like a slow tsunami. In the corner office of Apex Tower, Amara sat alone, a single lamp casting a circle of gold over stacks of open files. Her phone vibrated once, a single tone, the one she'd assigned to internal executive signals. She lifted it. Elena, it's done. The full divestment order went through. Raj, liquidity freeze confirmed. Their accounts are officially locked. Amara's eyes stayed on the skyline. From this height, Chicago looked orderly, streets and lights in perfect alignment, but she knew chaos was moving quietly underneath. Thank you, she replied. Now pull the secondary line. A pause. Then Elena. The contingency clause? Yes, Amara said softly. Execute it. Down the line, 3,000 miles away, servers hummed awake in a data center in Singapore. Encrypted packets moved through fiber like veins of light. The name Vanguard Equity threaded through the code, and with it, the quiet command that would delete 5 years of predatory leverage every asset Moreau Holdings had hidden offshore. The countdown began. Across town, Isabel Moreau's mansion blazed with light. Her father had called an emergency board meeting, faces on screens, grim and sleepless. The banks have frozen all lines of credit, the CFO said. Every partner's pulling out. Isabel's voice trembled. We can fix this. We'll apologize. Harrison slammed a hand against the table. You don't apologize to a ghost. The room fell silent. He leaned back, exhausted. She's not going to answer your calls. People like her don't speak, they act. Isabel turned toward the window, her reflection pale in the glass. Who is she? No one answered. The phone on the table lit up unknown number. Harrison hesitated, then picked up. Mr. Moreau, came a calm, measured voice. This is Elena from Vanguard Equity. Miss Lewis asked me to relay her regards. Isabel froze. Her father's voice cracked. You can't just... The transfer is complete, Elena continued. Per Clause 14B, your firm's collateralized assets are now under independent review. You'll receive documentation by morning. What does that mean? Isabel demanded, leaning toward the speaker. Elena's tone didn't change. It means the money you built your reputation on is no longer yours to spend. A click. The line went dead. Back at Apex Tower, Amara stood before the massive windows. Snow drifted against the glass like falling ash. Her reflection watched her poised, unflinching. Her assistant entered quietly. "Miss Lewis," he said, holding a tablet. "Confirmation from the Department of Commerce. The audit request you filed is officially public." Amara nodded. "Good." She walked to her desk and opened the top drawer. Inside lay an old photograph. Her grandmother in a faded uniform, hands on her hips, eyes that looked like fire restrained. Amara traced the edges of the image with her thumb. "They called you a servant too," she whispered. On social media, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Clips from the gala merged with headlines. "Mystery CEO cancels. $2B deal after public humiliation." Comment threads exploded, some furious, some reverent. Number "Dignity Eyes Power" trended within the hour. Influencers replayed the same moment, Isabel's pointed finger, Amara's stillness over orchestral music, and captions that read, "Grace under fire." At 4:02 a.m., Bloomberg confirmed it. Vanguard Equity withdraws from Moreau merger. Market impact. Immediate. The feed scrolled endlessly, but Amara had stopped watching. She stood by the window as dawn began to stain the horizon pale gray. The city below glimmered in cold light, unaware that its balance sheets were being rewritten from the top down. Her phone buzzed one last time, a message from Elena. "Press asking for a statement. Should I prepare one?" Amara typed, "No need. The numbers will speak." Then she set the phone face down, her hands steady, her breathing even. The snow outside slowed, and for the first time all night, the sky began to clear. Somewhere across town, Isabel was still shouting into a phone that no longer connected. And Amara Lewis, the woman they had called just a servant, watched the sunrise paint the glass towers gold. Every ray a quiet reminder that respect, once demanded, can be taken without a word. By sunrise, the city's skyline had turned the color of steel. The snow had stopped, but the silence it left behind was louder than traffic. Chicago's morning belonged to headlines. CNBC. Vanguard Equity cancels $2B merger. Market shockwaves begin. Forbes, the woman behind the collapse. Financial Times, invisible CEO reshapes Wall Street overnight. Screens everywhere replayed the same 30-second clip. Isabel Moreau's voice slicing the air. Amara's calm face like carved stone, the wine stain blooming across orange silk. But this time, the caption beneath it read, "She owned the room." The world had shifted in less than 12 hours. Inside Vanguard's executive floor, phones rang nonstop. Analysts, journalists, and even government liaisons were begging for access. Raj stood before the main screen, graphs plummeting across every index related to Moreau Holdings. "They've lost $900 million in valuation," he said. "That's before the markets even open." Elena scrolled through legal notices. 4 of their subsidiaries have filed for bankruptcy protection. "We're getting calls from partners asking if they can move their contracts to us directly." Amara entered, her steps quiet but decisive. She wore black, now a clean suit, unadorned, elegant. "Let them," she said. "Integrity attracts investment faster than profit ever will." Raj hesitated. "Do we engage the press?" Amara shook her head. "No. Let their words chase our silence." Across town, chaos had a new address. The Moreau boardroom, once gleaming with confidence, now smelled of fear and burnt coffee. Lawyers whispered. Screens blinked red. Isabel sat in the corner, hands trembling over her phone, scrolling through the avalanche of outrage. Social media had turned savage. The heiress who mocked the wrong woman, from champagne to consequences. $2B lesson in humility. Her father slammed a newspaper onto the table. "Do you understand what you've done?" he barked. Tears welled, but she held them back. "It was supposed to be a joke that cost us the company." He lowered his voice, almost pleading. "Do you even know who she is?" Isabel shook her head. "She's the founder of Vanguard," Harrison said, disbelief choking the words. "You humiliated the one person capable of saving us." The room fell into stunned silence. Even the hum of electronics seemed to stop. Back at Vanguard, Elena looked up from her tablet. "Public sentiment is unprecedented. People are calling you a symbol of quiet power." Amara didn't react. "Symbols fade," she said. "Actions don't. This consider now that is hell false, this follow peros face any wandus." She turned toward the window, her eyes tracing the reflection of the city awakening below. "Transfer phase 2, she added. Elena blinked. "The fund?" Amara nodded. Every cent we pulled from Moreau Holdings goes into the Marjorie Lewis Foundation. Focus on education grants, legal aid, and startup capital for women of color. Announce it at noon. Raj frowned. Won't that look like revenge? Amara's gaze didn't move from the horizon. Then they've misunderstood justice. By 9:15 a.m., trading opened. The first bell rang like a funeral toll. Within minutes, Moreau Holdings stock plunged 30%. Commentators scrambled for explanations, but the truth was simple. One decision, one signature, one act of dignity had rewritten the day's economy. At 9:42, Vanguard's spokesperson read a brief statement on live television. Effective immediately, Vanguard Equity has redirected all withdrawn assets from the Moreau merger toward community development initiatives. We remain committed to ethical leadership and sustainable wealth. No mention of names, no mention of scandal, just the precision of control. Across the ticker, the market stabilized. Investors began redirecting capital toward Vanguard-backed projects. The message was clear. Power rooted in principle doesn't fall, it multiplies. At that same moment, in a small apartment on the south side, an elderly woman watching the news wiped a tear from her eye. The anchor spoke of a new foundation, bearing her name, Marjorie Lewis. She whispered to no one in particular, "My baby did it right. It is not maniconable wider in a nod or down. It is not maniconable." The camera in the newsroom cut to a still image. Amara standing beside a glass wall, city light behind her, unflinching. The anchor's voice lowered. "This isn't just a financial story," she said. "It's a reminder that sometimes silence is the most powerful form of speech." And across the world, as markets trembled and egos fell, Amara Lewis closed her office blinds, letting the morning sun fade to shadow the calm after the quake she'd written with a single call. By late afternoon, the news cycle had devoured the Moreau name. Pundits dissected the collapse from every angle. Finance, race, class, gender. But no one could escape the truth humming beneath it. Power had shifted without a sound. The Moreau mansion, once the stage for endless soirée, was now a press camp. Cameras crowded the iron gates. Reporters shouted questions that Isabel could hear through the walls. She hadn't left her room in hours. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized. Makeup smudged, pearls gone, posture broken. The phone in her hand blinked with missed calls, her inbox drowning in headlines. The heiress and the ghost CEO. How arrogance cost $2B overnight. Her father's voice erupted downstairs, arguing with lawyers, investors, journalists, anyone who would still pick up. But no one could salvage what dignity had been sold for applause. She looked toward the window, where the city lights began to flicker on, and for the first time, she understood what Amara's silence had meant. It wasn't retreat, it was command. Across the river, the Vanguard headquarters was tranquil. No celebration, no champagne, only the sound of quiet accomplishment. Elena entered Amara's office with a tablet in hand. Phase 2 announcement was received better than expected, she said. Media's calling the foundation a revolution in restitution. The message is clear. Dignity equals power. Amara signed a final document, her handwriting calm and deliberate. Good. End the day there. Elena hesitated at the door. Do you ever feel vindicated? Amara looked up, the hint of a smile softening her eyes. Vindication is noisy. I prefer results. Outside, snow began to fall again. Soft and deliberate, the same quiet grace that had marked every step of her retaliation. In homes and offices across the country, people replayed the moment of humiliation, not to pity her, but to remember what restraint looked like when armed with purpose. A journalist's voice echoed from a nearby TV in the lobby. She never raised her voice, never demanded attention, yet she dismantled a dynasty overnight. The staff watching didn't cheer. They stood a little straighter. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was reverence. At the same hour, a letter arrived at the Moreau estate, hand-delivered, embossed with Vanguard's crest. Isabel opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, one sentence, handwritten in dark ink. Grace teaches louder than revenge ever could. No signature, just that. She sank into a chair, the note trembling in her hand. For the first time, tears came not for the money, not for the scandal, but for the simple, terrifying truth that she had never once understood grace until it stood in front of her and refused to kneel. Back in Apex Tower, Amara watched the snow blur the skyline. Her reflection ghosted against the glass. Behind her, the city thrummed, not in fear, but in awe. By nightfall, the same ballroom that had mocked her 12 hours earlier would sit empty. Lights dimmed, laughter gone. And for once, silence ruled cold, complete, and entirely hers. The next morning arrived quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. Newspapers lined doorsteps across the country. Amara's photo nowhere to be found, but her presence written between every headline. Markets stabilize under Vanguard leadership. Philanthropic fund eclipses scandal. The elegance of accountability. Amara sat in her office, a cup of tea untouched beside her. The dawn light washed the glass walls in pale gold. Below, traffic flowed like a river of steel and order. Everything appeared normal except that nothing was the same. Elena entered, tablet in hand. The foundation site went live an hour ago, she said. We've already received over 12,000 applications, education, housing, small business grants. It's unprecedented. Amara nodded, eyes still on the city. Good. Make sure the first round prioritizes single mothers and first-generation students. Dignity multiplies when it's shared. Raj followed, a hesitant smile softening his usual precision. You've redefined philanthropy, Amara. No boardroom could have written a better ending. She looked up, her expression calm. There's no ending, she said. Just correction. He paused, realizing she meant it. There was no triumph in her tone, no trace of vengeance, only balance restored. Across town, the Moreau estate was silent for a different reason. Reporters had left. The marble floors echoed with the emptiness of consequence. Isabel stood in the garden, wrapped in a coat too thin for the cold, staring at the newspaper headline taped to the gate. She'd spent the night writing letters of apology she didn't know how to send. Every sentence sounded like an excuse. Every word was small. Her father approached quietly. You should rest, he said, voice hollow. She didn't turn. Do you think she'll ever forgive me? He looked out at the snow-covered city. Forgiveness is her language, he said. We just never learned to speak it. At noon, a press conference took place in Vanguard's atrium. Rows of journalists filled the space, expecting a statement, maybe even a grand speech. Instead, Amara walked to the podium, her posture unshakable, her words deliberate. Yesterday's events reminded us that wealth means nothing without worth, she began. What was taken through arrogance will be repurposed through compassion. The Marjorie Lewis Foundation will open its doors today, built not from revenge, but from responsibility. Flashes erupted. Cameras captured her silhouette against the light, a woman who had turned public humiliation into a blueprint for justice. Then, without another word, she stepped away. No questions, no applause, just quiet. Outside, snow began to fall again. Fine, soft, endless. In that hush, the city moved differently. Bankers paused before meetings. Strangers held doors. The moment had become more than a scandal. It had become a mirror. From somewhere above, Amara watched it all unfold. The power she'd reclaimed wasn't loud or sharp. It was patient, enduring, woven into every act of grace she left behind. She closed her eyes, remembering her grandmother's voice. Baby, never fight to be seen. Just live so they can't forget. And with that, she smiled, not for victory, but for peace finally earned without shouting. By evening, the storm had cleared. The city gleamed under a sheet of white light, every surface calm, restored, as if the chaos of the last 24 hours had only been a fever dream. From the top floor of Apex Tower, Amara watched the horizon fade to gold, her reflection resting quietly against the glass. On her desk lay a small stack of letters, handwritten, not printed, notes from young women, students, entrepreneurs, mothers thanking her for what they called the silent revolution. She read each one slowly, carefully, as though they were prayers. Elena entered with a file. The board approved the final disbursement, she said softly. 20 million in scholarships, another 30 for small business loans. The press is calling it the day Grace changed Wall Street. Amara smiled faintly. They'll find another storm soon enough. Elena hesitated at the door. You really don't want your name on the foundation plaque? No, Amara said. Names fade. What matters is the echo. She turned toward the window again. The city below pulsed like a living thing, humbled, a little slower, a little wiser. Across the river, In the same ballroom where it all began, workers dismantled crystal chandeliers and folded linen back into crates. The laughter that once filled the room had long vanished. Isabel stood at the doorway, wrapped in a heavy coat, watching the dismantling of her world. Her father approached quietly, the years showing in his eyes. "They'll rebuild," he said, though even he didn't sound convinced. She didn't answer. Her gaze lingered on the spot where Amara had stood, the same patch of marble, now wiped clean but forever marked in her mind. Finally, she whispered, "I thought humiliation was the worst thing that could happen to someone." Harrison looked at her. "It isn't." She turned to him, voice barely audible. "Then what is?" He sighed. "Not learning from it. Is it weight, Johnny? Is it weight to our ice?" Isabel lowered her eyes, the weight of it settling into her bones. For the first time in her life, she didn't think of money or image, only of the echo she'd left behind, and the woman who'd answered it with silence. Back at Vanguard, the office was empty except for Amara. The city's hum was distant, almost musical. She picked up her grandmother's photo from the desk one last time and whispered, "We did it right." Then she walked to the elevator, pressing the button marked lobby. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and as she stepped inside, her reflection disappeared from the glass, not erased, but absorbed into the world she'd changed. Outside, night settled gently over the city. In windows, on screens, in quiet conversations, people repeated her story, not her wealth, not her power, her calm. And somewhere, a voiceover might have said what everyone was already thinking. Dignity doesn't shout. It waits, it watches, and when the moment comes, it moves the world without raising its voice. The doors of Apex Tower closed behind her, and the world, humbled, colder, but somehow brighter, carried her silence like a lesson it would not forget.